to Wax On, Wax Off, the podcast where a teenager gains wisdom and insight from pioneers and innovators that have come before in search of how to win in every facet of life and change the world. I'm your host, Solomon Cole, and let's get into today's episode. So for today's episode, it's going to be a solo episode, and really what I want to dive into is something that I've been really thinking about and pondering. I think my generation, but all generations really need to hear this and need to understand this. But before we get into it and I tell you what it is, which you probably already know what it is because it's in the title of the episode, I would like you to do a couple things. So the first thing is go to the Patreon. Go to the Patreon, patreon.com/waxonwaxoffpodcast. Go there. Subscribe. It's only $5 a month. You're going to get episodes early. You're going to get exclusive content. You're going to get all these amazing things. And also you just get the opportunity to support a young entrepreneur in his journey of trying to have a podcast and trying to make it profitable, because that would be the goal, because I love doing this. And the end goal is to be able to do what I love, where it pays for itself. It pays for my life. It pays for maybe even the lives of those around me. Yeah. So that's just kind of my dream. So if you want to support my dream, go to the Patreon, do that. Also, you can subscribe on YouTube, or if you're watching on YouTube, or you can subscribe to Apple Podcast or whatever, all those. Follow on Instagram also at Wax On Wax Off Podcast. Oh wait, I want to also, here's a little sneak peek. This is one of the many designs that I have for my clothing brand. Here's another hat too, Brain Rot. Here's some shirts that I've been working on. So if you don't know, here's this, right there, bam. I have a couple other designs. Here's one more. I apologize to the audio listeners because here are some of them. So the clothing company is called Brain Rot, for those who couldn't tell already. And pretty much what it is me and my friends were looking at quote unquote brain rot culture. We were like, no one really does a brand that goes off of brain rot culture, and brain rot, the name was up for grabs, and we were like, well, we're gonna do that, of course. So it's me and my friend X, who will be on the podcast soon. We've already recorded the episode, but this episode's gonna be before that. And then my friend Ashton, who edits all the videos and helps me with content ideas and stuff. So getting into the meat of the episode and really talking about what it is I want to talk about is, today I want to talk about honesty, because that's something that I've found prevalent in my life, but it's also something I found prevalent in the world and in the culture, which, if we want to define culture is what I would say is a mixture of, I would say it's specifically in America, but it could be prevalent around the world. I'm not sure. You have to let me know. But in American culture, there is a lack of honesty or telling of partial truths. And what I think needs to happen is people need to be honest, because, and I'm going to get into all this, but I think when you're honest, the world grows. The world it furthers along. Art furthers along. It goes farther than it ever could have been. And I think we've forgotten the importance of honesty in our lives. So my first point, I guess if you want to call them points, is creativity only exists when telling the truth. If you look at your favorite songs, or like a heartbreak song, or whatever your favorite music artist is, or even like painting, it's someone being completely honest and telling the truth. Like the stuff, like the chaff of music that comes and goes, it's just people just saying stuff because it'll get TikTok views, or saying stuff because it'll stream well. Like when you look at, even Taylor Swift, I think some of her biggest stuff is when she was really being honest and it was just her telling the truth. Or Olivia Rodrigo, some of her songs are very just super honest, but there are some artists that I can think of that are even older than that, and it's just honesty, and it's people saying something that's relatable to their lives that other people relate to. And creativity only thrives when you can be honest. And I think music, honestly, I think you can look at a country or a time period and see what their music or what their art was like, and it can tell you how they're doing. And right now, I think a lot of our music is, and I think there are some artists who are not doing this, but for the most part, it's since TikTok existed, it's how can I get streams? How can I get views? How can I get whatever? And it's just not healthy for what we're trying to do in an honest society. It doesn't exist because it's just people doing things. They're lying, not necessarily lying, but they're not telling the truth. They're not doing something that is actually meaningful to them. They're just doing it for a stream, or at least that's what it seems like to me. Also, comedy. Look at the comedians, the people. I heard Joe Rogan say, if you can't, or what was it? It was in, I think it was in some Native American tribe where they had pretty much someone called, it was similar to, I think it was the sacred clown. And pretty much what they would do is they would go around, and if they made fun of something and people were like, oh, you can't make fun of that, then that meant that that thing that couldn't be made fun of was probably BS. It probably wasn't. There was probably something was up, and it was just BS. And you have to be able to look at things and make fun of them. And that is a part of honesty, is being able to look at something and be like, yeah, it's stupid. Or yeah, we're making fun of that. Or yeah, it's like, not in a mean way, but just in a lighthearted, honest way, to be honest. Another thing that I want to say is like, look at, here's why I think, personally, why I think if you don't know who Theo Von is, you should look him up because I love his stuff. But this is why I think Theo Von is funny. And he's one of the many comedians that I like, but I probably like him the most out of all comedians. And here's why I think he's funny. One, because he's extremely honest on his podcast and he talks about his life, and you get to make a emotional attachment with him, and you feel as if you're friends with him because he's transparent and talks about his problems in his life. But what I really think makes him funny is because he tells stories that are so outlandish, that are so absurd, that they literally cannot not be true. Like, no one can make that up. No one can make up that he wrangled up chimpanzees when he was 11 with the cops. That's not, like, no one can make up those stories. I mean, that's an aspect of honesty, and that's why these stories that he says are so funny, is because people are like, dude, this guy can't be making this up. So that would be my first point. The next point is Jordan Peterson, in his first book, he says, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And I think this is extremely important for people to know, is if you're going to live an honest life, it doesn't mean that you have to say everything that you think, or you have to, just because something's honest doesn't mean that you have to say it. So you can, like, okay, how do I quantify this? If you're given the opportunity, if there's a fork in the road and there's only two options and it's between honesty and lying, you're going to pick honesty. That's what you should do if you want to live an honest life. But if there's I don't know if it would be still it's a three fork. If there's three paths that you can choose, where it's honesty, lying, or not saying anything at all. In most cases, it depends on the situation, and you're going to have to discern whether you want to, what it is that you want to do. But you're going to have to either be honest, or you're going to have to just not say anything at all. And I think a lot of times, I don't know. So I'm in my head, I don't know if any of you have ever watched or listened to the musical Hamilton, but there's a character, Alexander Hamilton, who is a historical figure, and there's also another character, Aaron Burr. And what Hamilton does is Hamilton is always honest, for the most part. He says everything that he thinks, and he means everything that he says. So that's advice that Elle Macpherson gave back in my episode with Elle Macpherson, which you should go listen to after you finish this episode. She said, say what you mean and mean what you say. And I think that that's very important as well. But with Alexander Hamilton, he said everything that he said, everything that he meant, and he left nothing out on the table. They say, why do you write like you're running out of time? He was just constantly putting out everything that he was thinking and wanting to say. And then this Aaron Burr character, who is also another historical figure who ended up killing Alexander Hamilton, he at least in the Hamilton musical, he says, what does he say? Pretty much just he's going to play the long game, and he's going to be quiet, talk less, smile more. That's what he says. And that's some people's motto. And I think both paths are fine as long as you're being honest. And I would challenge you. Here's a challenge that you should try. Say every single, and this is also beneficial because it makes you have to be in the present moment, and you're not passively saying anything. You are consciously picking and choosing what you're going to say. is try and be 100% honest for like a whole day or a whole week or a whole month or a whole year, and do it like one day at a time. Be like, can I be 100% honest today? Everything that I say is not a lie and is not embellished. And that brings me to another point, which is like, why do people lie? For me, lying is not like to get out of trouble or to avoid a consequence of some kind. It's not for that. I mainly, when I lie, it's to embellish a story, to make people think that I am better, or the story that I'm saying is more entertaining or whatever, so that people will like me more, or people will find my stories more entertaining, or the things that I say more entertaining if I embellish it, which embellishing is a form of lying, just so you know. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like we in our society, you're rewarded because there is a narrative that exists, and that's true. It's the we've always had narratives. We've always had these human. It's I heard Elon Musk talk about it. It's like everyone knows you can't go and stand up on a table. That's just a rule, but the rule is never actually put out there. We're just born into a world with these unseen rules, these invisible walls that we can't cross. But the whole thing about them being invisible is that they're not even invisible, they don't exist. These walls don't exist. We just walk as if we're in a maze when we're actually in a field. And I think the walls are more and more walls are being put up. Some of the walls are fair. Some of the walls are societal walls that need to exist, which is like, oh, you don't be a maniac out on the when you're in a store or when you're in a restaurant or whatever. Like, that makes sense. But then there are some that are being put into place, and I'm not going to say what they are because to be honest, I can't really think of them, but you know what they are, where they're not important and they don't need to exist, and it's just for um it's niceties. Drop the niceties. That's what Hamilton says. Is he says drop the niceties to Burr, because Burr is sometimes people will be too polite and they need to be too politically correct or whatever that looks like in today's culture. And sometimes you just got to be honest, because people respect honesty more than they respect someone who's politically correct. And I honestly, to be honest, I struggle with political correctness when I'm creating content and I'm trying to think of, and not even political correctness, but just societal correctness, and trying to think of everyone's perspective and trying to please everybody, when that's just not logistical. That's not going to happen. And it's okay that is not going to happen. People who are honest contribute to society and they add value to the world around them. Like I said with comedians, like I said with honestly, any art form, if it's better if you are being honest, but honestly, in everyday life, it's better if you're being honest, because people will look at someone who embellishes or someone who lies or someone who you can't really tell if they lie or tell the truth, versus looking at someone who they know is either honest, know who pretty much everything they say is honest. I'm not saying you should be honest 100, you're going to be honest 100% of the time, which you're not going to be honest 100% of the time. But I think that people will reward those who tell the truth more than they reward those who lie in the long game. In the short game, those who, I mean, let's use streaming, for example, like streaming in music. Let's say you're an independent artist and you tell the truth and you write your own songs, and your songs are your perspective of the truth, which, let me just make a quick touch on something real quick. Just because you're being honest doesn't mean that it's the truth. A lot of people's honesty and them telling what they think is true, and they're not consciously lying, but they're maybe not telling the truth. Like, or they're being honest, but it doesn't. I hope this makes sense. Like, I can be honest, but maybe I'm incorrect about what it is I am being honest about, and therefore it is not the truth. And also, no, it doesn't work on the other way. But so that's something that I want to just touch on real quick. But going back to music, is you can come out with like a whole album where it's this independent artist who's being honest and is being whatever, and they don't stream. Let's say they get 10,000 streams, and then you have this other artist who has figured out that they can not lie, but not create something that is genuinely them, which is a form of lying, which is bad. and they will get millions and millions of streams. But in the long game, the person who is honest and puts the effort in and really dives within themselves to create honest music is going to be rewarded in the end, because they're going to look back on their portfolio of music and seeing what they did, and they're going to go, I'm proud of this. Versus that person who comes out with the ingenuine music that they don't really like. They kind of just put it out because they know that Spotify streamers will stream it, and they know that people on TikTok will like it, and that it will be more profitable. They're going to look back on their life and they're going to say, yeah, I have all this money, but I was a sellout. I was disingenuous. I was not someone, I wasn't myself. I was a persona that would sell more. And that's not a rewarding life. Someone who's honest in the long game is going to win. In the short game, it might be tough because you're like, oh, I'm not making money. And the honest person looks at the essentially the person who lies, and they say, oh, I'm not winning. I'm not making money. I'm not being successful. That's in the short term, and a lot of people who are being honest look at, including myself, honestly, in podcasting, I'll look at other people who I see are just doing it because they figured out how to hack an algorithm, or they figured out how to uh, have a high streaming podcast, and we started at the same time, and they're becoming more number wise successful. I'm gonna That person who is being honest is going to look back 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, and they're going to see that what they did was honest and what they did was meaningful. And maybe the people who are just doing it for the streams are going to look back and be like, I achieved what I wanted to achieve and it was meaningful. Great. I don't know. I'm not that person. I want to reinstate that the culture that exists has a false narrative. And I defined culture in the beginning, but it's a false narrative. The world, or the culture of the world, or whatever, it rewards people and it makes the people successful that either lie or tell partial truth. At least that's where we are right now. And I don't know why that is. I could blame it on social media. I could blame it on because social media kind of puts a false standard out there, which false constitutes as a lie. But I don't know. It erodes away from the integrity of my generation, of generations before mine, of generations after mine. And I think what's important is being honest, because when you're honest, you have something real. Lies are just fake. And do you really want to be a fake generation? Because, and I think a lot of people don't think about that we are all puzzle pieces in this thing that is called Gen Z, or what is it? What's the other one? Gen A, Gen Alpha, whatever. Like or if you're before and you're a millennial or whatever, you're contributing to an entire generation of people, and what you do matters. And you need to understand the importance that your honesty, that your contribution has, because it does matter. Here's an example, and this is also an example of an Aaron Burr, for example. So there's a book written by George Orwell called Animal Farm. I had to read it for school, and in the book there are all these animals on a farm. The farmer mistreats the animals, he overworks the animals, he underfeeds the animals, he's not a good dude. And the animals get fed up and they overthrow the farm, mainly by the leadership of the pigs on the farm. And once they overthrow the farmer, he leaves the farm and they start creating rules. The pigs are kind of the brains of the operation. They start making these rules. They write them all out on the barn, all these rules, right? And all the other animals, some of them know how to read, others of them don't. The donkey is one who knows how to read. I'm trying to think of anyone else who knows how to read. Some of them know how to read like the first couple letters of the alphabet, but the donkey knows how to read all of them. And over time, the pigs start getting a taste for what it's like to be a human, human beds, alcohol, all these things. And the rules that were put in place state that you can't sleep in a bed, that you can't do pretty much anything that would make you like a human. But the pigs are intellectually smarter than the other animals. So the pigs go and they change the rules at night. So they'll go up and they'll add things. So you can't sleep in a bed with sheets because, oh, and so they'll add with sheets at the end of the sentence. Because, oh, that would be absurd to sleep in a bed with sheets, but it's fine if you sleep in a bed that doesn't have sheets. So that's one of the things that they start doing. And then they do a bunch of other things, pretty much changing the rules to make it more beneficial for the pigs. And the donkey, the entire time, is sitting there and he's seeing these words being changed and he's acknowledging them, but he doesn't want to say anything because he's scared that he will get exiled or killed or whatever it is, right? So he just stays complacent. He doesn't do anything, he doesn't say anything. And over time, the animals start getting treated worse and worse and worse and worse. And it ends up becoming that the animals were being treated worse by the pigs than they were by the farmer. They would have been better off if they would have just stayed with the farmer because the pigs were greedy and the pigs did things to the animals, the other animals that just were unfair and unkind. And the reason I tell this story is to say to some of the people who maybe you are awakened, as I like to call you. You have your eyes are opened to what's going on. And you see people who are being taken advantage of, and you see things that are happening around you that are unfair and that something is afoot. But you don't want to say anything and you just want to stay silent and stay complacent. Don't do that. Just don't, because you're just as bad as the people who are doing things and taking advantage of people. You are equally complacent in that because you are allowing it to happen, and maybe you're not going to stop it if you say something about it. It's probable, but you're at least going to do something that's going to change. You're going to contribute in some way, and this goes back to the we all have a voice in our generation. We all contribute. And I think social media has all tried to make us feel like we are the same. We are, or trying to fit us all into a box of, I mean, you just go to a middle school or a high school and look at the kids. Look at the guys. Look at the men or boys, whatever. Look at them. And look at what they look like, how they dress. Look at their hairstyles. Look at how the girls dress. They in high school, they all look the same. They all dress the same. And anyone who does not dress the same or look the same or have the same hairstyle is outed and is outcasted from the society that is high school. The world should not be that way. You're not meant to be the same as anyone else. You're not meant to be like Charlie. You're not meant to be like Justin. You're not meant to be like Jackson. You're not meant to be like those people. You're meant to be yourself. And if you're not yourself, then what the frick are you doing? So I'm going to leave you with a thought, and then we're going to end this episode because I have a pizza in the oven and the timer just went off. There are people in America who are on the left side. There are people who in America are on the right side. Let's refer to these things as wings because that's what they say: right wing politician, left wing politician. So let's say there's a right wing and there's a left wing. If you listen back to my episode with Robert Edward Grant, he talks about how humanity transcended duality. Now, the term left and right wing, one and two, duo, being like multiple or two, duality, that all exists in the world. And what we need to do is we need to see the duality around us that exists, the left and the right wing. And if you're someone who's in the middle and you see you're kind of like in spectator mode and you're looking at left and right and you're seeing these people fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, what do you do? Well, I think this is a realization that I've come to, is humanity is like a game. I don't know if we've ever completed the game before and then we lost it again, but I think how we win the game is very simple. It's also very complex, but it's very simple. It's saying all the sides that we hold, the left and the right, the whatever you are, whether you're politically different, racially different, gender wise you're different, whatever it is, there are polars, right? And the goal is to not be on one pole or the other pole. It is to transcend the poles and bring both sides together, to switch the polarity from pushing and pushing, so two people pushing against each other, or pulling and pulling and pulling two people away from each other. It's just bringing the wings back together and letting the bird fly. That's the human condition. That's the human puzzle. It's very simple. The puzzle, a bird, there was a puzzle like a wooden bird, and it was three pieces. There's the body and the two wings. I would say the people who are awake and are looking at the people who are so enraged on the right and the left. And I'm not even talking about politically, I'm talking about anything, any opposite. The goal of the body is to grab the wings and get the wings to forgive each other and to move on and to attach the wings to the body again. And then once you do that, you can freaking fly, because you can transcend duality. And now, as a generation, what good can we do? How much good can we do? How can we help other countries? How can we help other continents? How can we help other freaking planets? That's the goal. So think about that. Think about think about what part of the bird are you, and how can you bring the bird back together? That's all you need to do. It's not that crazy. Thank you for listening to this episode. Let me know your thoughts on it. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, I want to hear your thoughts. Any constructive criticism or any feedback would be great. I love all of you. Bye, everyone.